When we hear of a monster getting a retrain in Yu-Gi-Oh, it means that it's getting one or multiple cards that show off its new and improved form. Essentially, it's being retrained to be better for battle. Usually, but not always, their stats will be the same or their attack and defense will add up to the same value, like a little less attack but a little more defense for the same total. The point of retrains is to give monsters new effects that may make them more competitive for the modern game and give them shiny new artwork. Generally, this happens with legacy monsters that were either involved in manga and anime decks or just had some sort of prominence in the card game. But what about those retrains that make you go, why? Perhaps a retrain that gave a monster a lackluster new effect or highlighted a monster that was irrelevant to the anime and fanbase. So let's find the retrains that make us scratch our heads the most, whether it's because of a bad effect, strange monster choice, or simply how they look. And to help me navigate the near countless retrained monsters out there, here are my co-hosts. Judgment Meter.
Hey guys!
Corgian from the Corgian Twitch channel.
Well, personally, I know that none of my gorgeous tunes would ever get retrained. They're perfect as is, except for you, Manga Ryuran.
Sam from the Dungeon Dive Bar podcast.
You know every tune is a retrain, right?
You are going to jail.
Professor Oats.
Yeah, that's me. One day they will retrain Gross Ghost of Fled Dreams.
What are these cards?
And professional skill drain fan, SyzygySolo.
Thank you.
Now, let's study up on the top 10 weirdest Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster retrains. Number 10, Neo Kaiser Glider. This is a retrain of Kaiser Glider, and it kinda proves that if you had any sort of significance in the anime, you automatically have a higher potential of getting a retrain over other cards, cause who actually remembers Kaiser Glider?
I love Kaiser Glider. His effect is so silly, and he only was ever actually used in a single filler episode where Yugi and Kaiba dueled darts. Only other time he's seen in the entire anime is when Kaiba is forced to discard him during his duel with a Shizu. And for some reason, they decided he was worthy of 2 retrains.
Its original effect is that it cannot be destroyed in battle when it battles a monster with the same attack value, very specific, and it can bounce an opponent's card if it's destroyed, but it's a tribute monster, so that may not be worth all the resources. When it was retrained, they realized the effect wasn't good for modern day, so they changed it entirely, where it can now summon normal dragons from the graveyard by being discarded. Besides the effect redesign, it barely resembled the original Kaiser Glider now. I guess they both have wings and are dragons, but otherwise this could have just been a completely different monster and no one would have known the difference.
He's a cyborg now.
Damn, that's purple.
It's very purple. Kaiba got a lot of purple cards in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie pack.
This guy does not look like he glides. He looks like he is attached with jet engines and that he is flying very gracefully through the sky.
You don't understand. He is gliding through the power of the Konami orb.
What is the Konami orb?
See how he's got orbs all over him? That's it.
Oh.
Konami has a habit of sticking orbs on monsters to make them have orbs on them. We're not sure why. We're a fan of them though.
To further show the Kaiser Glider favoritism, he got a second retrain that looked more like his original card, showing him attacking at a dramatic angle, because I guess he's just that important.
So, Kaiser Glider Golden Burst is from a series of retrains, and this is me going into nerd mode, so I should put my nerd voice. Kaiser Glider Golden Burst is from a series of retrains where they named them after attacks in the anime. This was voted on by people in Japan. Other examples include other cards later on this list.
Number 9, Fortune Lady Every. It's hard to describe the official classification of Fortune Fairies versus Fortune Ladies. In the anime, the fairies evolved into the ladies, which is how retrains essentially happen. But in the card game, the fairies didn't come out until 2019, 10 years after the Fortune Ladies were released. So in the eyes of the card game, the Fortune Ladies came first and the fairies are the retrains. Then that opens up the question if they're actually just classified as counterparts of each other, since they are vastly different in some aspects, but now we're just getting pedantic. However, there is one Fortune Fairy-esque monster that's been around in the card game since 2009, called Solitaire Magician. She was based on the design of a Fortune Fairy, had an effect that supported the Fortune Ladies, and just kinda chilled there for years, acting as a stand-in for the Fortune Fairies when they weren't in the game. I always kinda felt bad for her, since I assumed in the lore that she knew the other Fortune Fairies, days, and the rest of her friends grew up to be evil and she was left behind being chibi and cute. Like she reconnected with them one day and she's all, "Oh, you guys got new jobs with the Dark Signers? I'm still here working with the Miracle Stone." Regardless of their relation, when the Fortune Fairies were released in the TCG in 2019, Solitaire Magician also got a retrain to become a Fortune Lady, becoming Fortune Lady Every, the first and only synchro monster for the Fortune Lady archetype. Solid effect and everything.
I like her. She's cool.
I do like that she went from just being solitaire by herself, and then she's like, you know what? Everything. I am all.
Now she's Minesweeper Magician.
I like how her staff has more cool rocks on it now. I think every retrain should have cool rocks.
Obnoxious rock.
She also has spikes on her tail now, though I never got why she had a tail to begin with from a design perspective.
She's a wizard.
But there are wizards without tails. Why is she the only fortune monster with one?
Do you not want a tail?
Not really.
Depends on the kind of tail. Some tails can't hold stuff.
Your tail ends in a Colt 45 pistol.
Definitely can't hold stuff.
No, and that's just scary at the grocery store.
Anyway, the main weird thing here is the timing. What took them so long? Why did they wait 10 years to give Fortune Ladies their own synchro? Especially when Solitaire Magician was sitting right there from the start waiting to evolve. This is a 5Ds era archetype. Having a synchro boss is kinda their thing. To be honest though, Solitaire Magician was such an irrelevant card, I didn't even learn about her until after Fortune Lady Every came out. So when I saw Solitaire Magician for the first time, I was like, oh cute, they made a Fortune Fairy design based on Every. Whoops. Number 8, Tardy Orc. This was a retrain of Giant Orc, who was one of those high attack beat stick level 4 monsters that we saw a lot in early Yu-Gi-Oh!, where they had no defense and were either forced into defense mode after attacking or had some other questionable restriction. Once we were into the late GX era, you didn't see too many of these standalone types of monsters ever again, with the Goblin attack force being the only beat stick like this getting a retrain. But in 2012, we randomly got a retrain of Giant Orc in the form of Tardy Orc, which had a similar trade-off for its 2200 attack power, being unable to attack the turn that it summoned. For early Yu-Gi-Oh!, this would have been a fine trade-off. Not many monsters can get over it first turn, and it essentially acts as a 2k defender for the turn it can't attack. He's a wall of meat that you can stall with. However, this card came out in 2012, when it was the Zuxel era. We already had monsters like this out for years, like Cyber Dragon, a big body that could special summon itself and not waste your normal summon and could attack the turn that it was summoned. Maybe Giant Orc was just notable enough where people wanted a retrain. He was a staple of Playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day since he was a high attack, low rarity monster. And how could you forget him being the signature monster of the classic Yu-Gi-Oh! GX character, Beauregard the Dueling Giant. I feel like Tardy Orc was meant to come out many years earlier and they just forgot about him, or it's a meta joke about how he's both late on the card and in real life. Really, I like this card for the lore. He's a background character in both the Sangan storyline and related to DD Trainer, and he's just a likable guy. Look at him, he's kind of adorable, missing his bus and dropping his stuff.
My personal take on it is, honestly, he retrained himself by getting an education. He's not very good at getting the education because he can't show up on time,
He's late for the bus.
but he's definitely trying. And you know what? Trying is the first step. Success is the second.
I feel bad for him. He's late on his trip to hell. So am I, buddy. So am I.
You see, look who else is in the bus. That's his best friend, the Coach Goblin. They're on their way to better themselves and get Giant Orc out of the wrestling ring and pursue a better life. Coach Goblin also is a retrain of the Union Support Monster's second Goblin, which the only effect it has is, if Giant Orc is in defense mode, put it in attack mode. That's it.
Oh, they've been friends forever.
I also went into more detail about it on my first backstory video, but this is the point where Coach Goblin gets dragged into the different dimension by DD Crazy Beast and then proceeds to tame him.
What the hell is this?
That's me after eating too much pasta.
That's me after not eating enough pasta on my way to Olive Garden for the unlimited breadsticks and pasta.
Oh, I love that.
What, Olive Garden or this card?
Olive Garden.
Oh.
But what are your thoughts on pasta?
Oh, yeah.
I just realized something really sad. Even with the power of friendship and night school, Giant Orc still loses to Goblin attack force.
That is a reason to be sad.
Well, they're trained fighters.
There's always online classes.
Number 7, Malice Doll of Demise. The weirdest thing about Malice Doll of Demise being a retrain is it technically isn't a retrain in the eyes of the card game only. This is the only Doll of Demise we've ever seen, end of story. However, its original form, Doll of Demise, was a part of Arcana's deck in the manga and anime. It really was just meant to be a creepy normal monster for a villain to use to show off a different ability, so it never really needed a release in the TCG. This makes Malice Doll of Demise the first real-life card that was retrained from an anime-only monster, unless I'm forgetting about someone else. Malice Doll of Demise actually has a cool effect that parallels what happened with its normal counterpart in the anime. When it's sent to the graveyard by a continuous spells effect, it returns to the field during your next standby phase, referencing how the original doll was used as tribute for the continuous spell Ectoplasmer, only that doll never came back since it didn't have an effect. The effect also solves the issue that I discussed in my creepy Yugioh video, where with the original Doll of Demise, you have this living doll whose main gimmick is that he's alive and not inanimate, and then you use the card that removes his living soul as ammo, turning his body into a lifeless shell, thereby removing the only thing that made him unique. Malice Doll of Demise shows that he can't stop being alive, he won't stop coming back.
I do like Malice Doll of Demise's hair. I feel like he could simultaneously be a murdering doll in a boy band from the 90s and in any anime.
No, that's a Zatch Bell thing.
He does look like a Zatch Bell character. He looks like he's gonna open his mouth and shoot out, I don't know, a swarm of bees at me.
Not the bees.
Just Biga!
Malice Doll of Bees.
Number 6, Mystical Elf, Mystical Burst Stream. It took about 20 years, but Mystical Elf finally got some sort of retrain, let alone a reference on another card again. She was one of those classic cards that had prominence in the early parts of the anime, and she seemed like she was primed for a retrain. Besides being a mainstay of Yugi's deck, she was featured on trap cards, had the first dark counterpart in the game, and had effects in the series where she could transfer her attack power via her chant. Things looked like they were on the up and up for her, but as soon as the world needed her, she disappeared. No new retrains, no archetypes, rarely even referenced on other cards, nothing, which was a shame since she was one of my favorite classic monsters. Part of it was the design, and part of it was just that she was a 2K defender, and I always liked how players referred to high defense monsters as big booties back in the day, so that always put the picture in my head of monsters with 2,000 or more defense like Mystical Elf or Giant Soldier of Stone with comedically exaggerated butts.
I hold that the blue background behind Mystical Elf is her butt.
Is there a picture of her full with a butt?
It is that whole blue background.
Here you go, Judgment Reader. This is the only scene of Mystical Elf's behind.
I'm excited.
There you go. That's it. That's the only scene in the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh!
That's definitely her backside. Enjoy, everyone. Enjoy.
And then she's immediately destroyed by a magical X lasering her in the chest. Triangle Ecstasy Spark.
How do you remember that?
What do you mean how to remember that? It's obvious.
I just don't understand why you have storage of where Mystical Elf's ass is. That's not something that people normally keep track of, Sam.
It's not even a full second. It's like 0.25 seconds.
That makes it worse.
However, the modern day finally decided to let Mystical Elf make a return, first as Bubbly Elf in Rush Duels, but then the main card game gave us Mystical Elf, Mystical Burst Stream, one of those signature move monster cards. The weird thing about it, or at least the weird thing at first glance, is that it featured Blue Eyes White Dragon on the artwork. Kaiba never used Mystical Elf in the anime, outside of that one trap card, so why pick Mystical Elf for a Blue Eyes team-up? Yes, Blue Eyes works with the effect of the retrain, but couldn't you have just picked one of Yugi's notable high-level normal monsters to put on the card instead? Mystical Elf was one of his cards to begin with. Well, the reason we have this duo is because it's a reference to the duel when Yugi faced off against imposter Ghost Kaiba, and used Monster Reborn on his Blue Eyes White Dragon, creating this pair. This is when Mystical Elf used her anime manga effect to transfer her attack power over to the dragon once it was on Yugi's side of the field via her chant, ultimately inspiring this retrain. So all in all, this is a retrain that makes sense in the end when you look into the history of it, but it definitely requires you to remember your Duelist Kingdom trivia. Number 5, Legacy Hunter. This one is weird because they went backwards with this retrain. Legacy Hunter came out after Danzalug, so it's sort of acts as a retrain for him, even though it's portraying him when he was younger, before he lost his eye and exchanged his thick blades for thin blades that are actually just guns.
It's Kano!
I've always had a lot of respect for the concept of Don Zalug because, like, he has a name, but, like, no descriptor, which is really rare in Yu-Gi-Oh! For something to have a name that doesn't actually reference anything else. Like, you'll have, like, Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic. You couldn't put Endymion on, but once you explain that he's the Mighty Master of Magic, you get it. But this is just Don Zalug. This is just some dude named Don.
No, he's a mob boss. His name is Zalug. Don is his title.
But Don can also be a name. This isn't made incredibly clear. It has to be Zalug, Dawn of the Black Scorpions, or that's their name, right?
Dark Scorpion.
I do not know about the deck because they are all bad.
Their effects both deal with hand destruction, where Zalug forces the opponent to discard after he inflicts battle damage, and Legacy Hunter shuffles a random card from your opponent's hand into the deck if it destroys a face-down monster and sends it to the graveyard, which is a lot more specific of a condition. Zalug has the better effect, so he feels like he should be the retrain, and these cards were released out of order. It's a weird limbo for me.
You don't understand. He had to steal the name from somebody else. He's hunting Don Zalug's legacy to become the new Don Zalug, which he had to do by engaging Bazoo the Soul Eater in combat to eat the soul of the previous Don Zalug.
Imagine if Bazoo the Soul Eater had no descriptor like Syzygy said. Bazoo.
Right, imagine if his name was just Bazoo.
Like, nothing would mean anything. I mean, even Soul Eater doesn't really mean that much, but, like, at least you could understand his relative job in the world. His job is to eat souls. He shows up, works his 9 to 5, eats the souls, you know? But, like,
He's eating a Konami orb.
That's where the soul's stored.
The soul is stored in the balls.
Would you be satisfied if his name was Don Zalug, comma, the Legacy Hunter?
Yes, see, that would make a lot more sense, because even if you don't know what a legacy hunter is, at least you're describing something. So, like, if you had Don Zalug, the legacy hunter, sure, I don't know what a legacy hunter is, but at least I know that he is one.
Yeah, he hunts legacies.
Scrimblow, Bimblow, the lovable Scramblow, I don't know what any of those means, but I know that there's a descriptor of something.
Okay, fine. Amidst all the name confusion, we can at least agree that Don Zalug created a cool duel in the anime.
I hate that duel.
Oh no.
He starts the duel. Don Zalug starts the duel, obviously cheating. He draws every single Dark Scorpion. Was it Dark Scorpion combination or Mustering of the Dark Scorpions? It's one of those.
He played Pot of Greed and drew both of them.
Well, first he had to get Pot of Greed because having all of those himself and Mustering of the Dark Scorpion is more than 5 cards, so that's like lower chances than having Exodia in your opening hand. And he did this giant combo and he still lost.
Oh, no, he did that. It wasn't even his full opening hand. His opening hand had Golem Sentry.
Ugh.
His deck was bad.
Number 4, Guiltia the Dark Knight Soul Spear. This was in the same batch of Legacy retrains as the Mystical Elf one, so it has the same gimmick of being a signature move card based on a monster with some sort of prominence in the manga and anime in reference to events in the manga. The original Guiltia the Dark Knight was one of Joey's monsters that he occasionally used, and it pretty much was defunct by Battle City. Like many retrains of monsters from the original series, its artwork is based off an action shot of it in the manga. Though it's kind of funny that despite how badass Soul Spear looks, this scene is taken from when Guiltia attacks Keith's pendulum machine, and their attack fails because of the rule at the time that magic doesn't affect machine monsters since this is Duelist Kingdom. So this epic pose is actually a picture taken shortly before disaster. The effect of this retrain seems oddly specific, allowing you to discard a card to search for either a Dark Level 7 Dragon, a Dark Level 6 Machine, or a Water Level 5 Warrior. However, this is a not so subtle reference to the cards that Joey won in other duels.
So I like how they thought they were slick with this one. It's like, oh, no one will know it's a Joey cameo. It's just, I don't know, a level 7 Dark Dragon monster, 1 level 6 Dark Machine monster, 1 level 5 Water Warrior monster.
Level 7 Insect? Nah, man, no.
Weevil didn't earn it. I do like that they said Esperoba was higher on the pecking order than Weevil.
Nobody likes Weevil Underwood. He tried to kill Yugi with a train.
Weevil's got rank 10s?
The weird thing here is, why did they choose Guiltia over other Joey-centric monsters? I'd get if this effect was only related to Duelist Kingdom moments, since that's where Guiltia shined, but since Jinzo and a legendary fisherman were Battle City prizes, I feel like one of his Battle City staples would have been more fitting for this retrain, like Alligator Sword, or Panther Warrior, or Swordsman of of Landstar. He loved Swordsman of Landstar. Guiltia never even got an official summon in Battle City.
My favorite thing about Guiltia in the anime is its last appearance was when Joey tried to normal summon it without tribute in his first duel in Battle City, and he went, "This card's terrible now. I'm never using it again."
Aww.
Number 3, Starry Knight, Starry Dragon. This is a retrain of Ryu, which was just a random level 7 vanilla dragon from the early days. It was in Bandit Keith's machine deck when possessed by Merrick for some reason, and it was a part of Teia's Capsule Monster team.
Which is a real thing I watched. I don't recommend it.
That's just Pokemon.
I wanted my Dungeon Dice Monster spinoff.
And it's not just that Ryu got a retrain, it got a whole archetype. How elaborate and detailed this archetype was felt a bit out of nowhere for this random monster. Like it got monsters meant to summon the retrain, it was featured on spells and traps doing cool things, it even got one of those long names where it repeats words and has punctuation. I just think this was a case of someone at Konami, or even Takahashi himself, liking the design of the original and wanting to expand upon it, making a whole archetype based on Silent Night, the Christmas song, not the movie series with the Garbage Day guy.
I like how it's a Christmas.
You know, one of the support cards for them is literally called Starry Night. Well, in Japan, it's Holy Night Nativity.
Yeah, it's got a Christmas Carol vibe going on, which is weird because the original's like, it burns you with flames, like a dragon.
Where's the Santa Claus tie-in?
He got replaced with kaijus. What do you want?
The localization on this one was kind of funny to me, since they translated the name of the retrain, but the original card was one of those early localized card names where they left the name in Japanese since they thought it sounded cooler than its translated English name, Holy Night Dragon. However, they did partially translate its suspected dark counterpart, Serpent Night Dragon, which had the translated name of Evil Night Dragon. So does that mean the next goal should be getting Serpent Night Dragon a retrain? He did have more screen time than Ryu in the original series, so it's only fair. Number 2, Doolittle Chimera, Miss Starboy, Great Fly, Mrs. Radiant, Wee Witch's Apprentice, and Hip Hoshingen. In Metal Raiders, they released a set of monsters that I like to call the Attribute Boosters. Each one of them boosted monsters with the same attributes as themselves by 500 attack points, along with decreasing the opposite attribute's attack by 400. These effects were active whenever these monsters were face up on the field. Nice little gimmick. Not sure if they were ever considered good, but I played Starboy in my old Legendary Ocean deck, and it makes for some good weekend jokes, so I liked him. Since these monsters were mostly irrelevant just a few sets after their release, they were never spoken about again. Not in the GX era, not during 5Ds, not for Zexal, and not for Arc 5. They seemed like they were one of the many gimmick monsters from the days of old that would be forgotten. But the Link era decided to surprise us by retraining all 6 of these monsters to essentially do the same thing, but now as Link monsters, so they had more niche uses in decks that had single attribute archetypes. Bladefly got swole, Witch's Apprentice got small, Milus Radius chilled out a bit, Little Chimera chilled out a lot, Hoshingen got more clothes beyond his cool shoes, and our Starboy became classy. This is probably my favorite one of the bunch, since it feels like they took the same artwork as the original and just copy-pasted a mustache and top hat on him. No disrespect though, I love Miss Starboy, and his name that's awkward to pronounce.
No, I don't like this one.
I love this one.
Well, hold on. You don't understand. He's practicing for his big day where he puts on a top hat and goes to Showtime. He even has a fancy cane. Look.
He's just so happy.
Oh no, actually I do like this one. The mustache and the hat for some reason make me feel a lot better about the star guy.
What I really like is that Miss Starboy has a monocle, which is very funny because, yeah, it's what he would wear. He doesn't need glasses.
But who would win in the battle of the star retrains, Miss Starboy or Hip Hoshingen?
He makes me really uncomfortable.
I like how Hip Hoshingen looks like that scene from the SpongeBob movie where Patrick is wearing the long heels and the fishnets.
Yes.
Fun fact, Hoshingen was actually in the Duelist Kingdom tournament, and after acquiring all of the star chips, he was able to battle Pegasus.
So I was gonna put the honorable mentions here, but there were at least 10 other retrains that we could think of that we would deem as weird. So we'll probably just reconvene for a sequel video at some point, since all the weirdness cannot be contained in a single list, and it's also just fun to talk about. Anyway, on to the top pick. It's hard to pick the de facto weirdest retrain. A lot of them have similar oddities, so we went with a retrain of a card that has gotten a weird amount of attention over the years, despite never getting any support and never being summoned in the anime. Number 1, Goddess of Sweet Revenge. She's a retrain of Yugioh Megami, and the two cards have a few aesthetic differences that aren't very different when you look into it. First, the names. Yugioh Megami is just an untranslated name from the early days of localization. It's Japanese for Goddess of Reversal, so the names are parallel. Next, their appearance. Yugioh Megami has sharper features and a darker color scheme than her retrain. However, Konami softened Yugioh Megami's features when the card was re-released to look more like her retrain, made to look paler and more friendly. Not sure if this was intentional to make the two cards look more alike, or just because Kazuki Takahashi had some alternate artwork for the original, but regardless, the new card art was still cool. You generally just see this treatment for big signature monsters, so it makes you wonder, between the retrain and the reprints, why was this random monster getting all this attention? She didn't seem any more significant than other old level 6 normal monsters. Well, it turns out she was involved with one iconic manga and anime moment.
It was used in one scene, and it is the best scene in the entirety of Duelist Kingdom. Kaiba hurled it at Kimo's gun to block him from shooting him in the head.
You don't do that on a common basis? I mean, I can do that with like UA midfielder like Trap Dust Shoot or something.
Even weirder and cooler, the Retrain found a way to reference this scene. Despite how badass it was, it does seem like it would be difficult to convey the power to stop a gun using a single Yu-Gi-Oh card effect, unless Goddess of Sweet Revenge was just a hard counter to the Barrel Dragon archetype, or something like that. But no, they found a way to go beyond. Her effect is, when you control no cards, and this is the only card in your hand, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can discard this card, destroy as many cards as possible your opponent controls, then you can special summon one monster from your deck. The most concise summary I've seen of how this effect parallels when Yugioh Megami disarmed a gun was actually on the Yu-Gi-Oh wiki. To summarize, Goddess has to be the only card in your hand when you control nothing else for this effect to be live, just like how Kaiba had no counter to Kimo's gun outside of a single copy of Yugioh Megami. Since the effect activates in response to attack declaration, it references that Kimo had the gun to Kaiba's head ready to shoot. Then Goddess being discarded to activate this effect references Kaiba throwing the card. The destruction of everything your opponent controls as a result parallels how Kimo was completely disarmed after this. And then finally, being able to summon a monster is supposed to be how Kaiba now had advantage over Kimo, getting his sweet revenge on the situation.
I'm excited for the next retrain, Goddess Best Served Cold.
I like her. I think we could be friends.
She killed a man.
Perfect.
And she likes
My standards are low.
This card may be too risky to use competitively, but it's probably the most clever way I've seen them do a retrain in my opinion.
So, Mr. Top 10 List, I have a surprise twist about Yugioh Megami.
Uh-oh.
There is a second retrain of Yugioh Megami.
Uh-oh.
It is Da Yugioh Megami, and it is in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s as a Rush Duel exclusive card.
What does she do?
She showed up and then immediately left the field in order to use Fusion.
Yeah, man, I truly underestimated the iconic nature of Yugioh Megami.
I'm gonna be honest, so we're talking about how iconic this card is, but I had never actually heard anyone say the name of it until just now.
So how have you all been saying it?
I have not been saying it.
I've been saying it wrong.
I've never said it. I just refuse to.
So by being able to take out real weaponry by day and your opponent's field by night, Goddess of Sweet Revenge tops this list of the weirdest Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster retrains. Now, what did you think? Did you like all these retrains that we discussed? Did some of them make a bit more sense than we gave them credit for? And which retrains did we maybe discard a bit too early and leave off this list? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.